Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Patricia Coughlin again, going into week 5 of, what do we say, sheltering at home and doing things very differently than we usually do. I was looking at that last video I did, and I looked totally exhausted. And I think I was. I don't know if I'm the only one feeling more tired than usual. But luckily, I sleep really well, so I'm feeling better now. Anyway, I was thinking, what in the world do I have to offer you this week? And, what came to me was the need to be creative. Now, I think, creative by nature. I'm a painter, and even, the way I cook is creative, the way I put my home together. But you don't have to have something that's maybe typically defined as creative or artistic to be creative. Being creative is about being flexible, right? One of those really key factors in the most effective therapists. So that's what I want to talk to you about today, how to use your creativity and intuition, especially in times like these when we have to be creative and flexible about how we're working with patients. I think, as we've talked about before, some of the qualities of the master therapist really do seem to be almost diametrically opposed to one another. And I think that's true here too. We want to be creative from a place of a solid foundation. So we have a wealth of knowledge and skill and lots of experience, and from that can be flexible and creative in the way we're going to use that knowledge and skill with a particular patient in a particular situation. So we don't want just people who are always shooting from the hip, being intuitive with no real idea of what they're doing. And then there are also people who, are extremely intelligent and well-read and have tons of knowledge and skill, but are kind of rigid and lack, again, that flexibility and creativity. So it really is about melding these two qualities. And I'm thinking of some examples. And one of the first ones that came to my mind was from a colleague, a Dutch colleague, Arno Goldschmidt, who is a psychologist from Maastricht. And the first time I met him and was asked actually to be sort of a panelist, right, on at a conference where he was presenting this work, I was gobsmacked by what he showed. He was showing a videotape of some work with a female patient who was extremely depressed and withdrawn. So it was very difficult to engage with her. She didn't really want to talk very much. She wouldn't look at him. And yeah, very unavailable. Now, in ISTDP, we would typically, name these behaviors as defensive, as creating a wall, making it impossible for us to work together. We would challenge the patient to give that up in order to openly engage. And I think he had tried some of these typical things, but nothing seemed to work. And so rather suddenly, in the middle of the session, he got up and he went to the closet and he got out a blanket. And he put the blanket over this woman because she was saying, that she just wanted to hide and she really didn't want to open up. And she felt much more comfortable if she could just be sort of withdrawn into herself. And so obviously somewhat paradoxically, he went with that and said, well, gee, then maybe you're not hidden enough. And, let's see if we can cover you up with this blanket. And so as he did this, suddenly you hear from underneath the blanket, she starts laughing. And then she starts to want to, peek out. And eventually she, of her own will, came out of hiding. And I mean, I was just kind of shocked by this when I saw it. And I was much earlier in my development and maybe even a little outraged by this sort of thing. But as I get older and more experienced, I really appreciate his creativity. And again, it came from a very authentic place of his caring, and he is a very playful kind of guy, also extremely intelligent and very well read and exposed to all kinds of different therapy models. So he was using his knowledge and understanding, right, of how to work with defenses. But since confronting them wasn't working, he decided to go with them in kind of a creative way. And it really did lead to a sort of breakthrough. And so I think that's a great example. Another one was with a young woman. She was actually a kind of a beginner, and she was working with a woman on accessing some feelings. And typically, again, we're going to be asking for the physiological signature of that feeling. What does it actually feel like inside? And so, she did that, and the woman was describing, I don't know what's happening with this light, but is that going to get in the way here? There. So then she asks her, what color is it? And again, I'm thinking, what the hell? What do you mean, what color is it? What color is a feeling? There's my, critical mind going. And the patient says, oh, it's green. Yes, it's like the color of spring. And again, I mean, it totally worked. And it really helped this woman both get in touch with this feeling and express it in a way that felt very authentic. So again, these were really good examples and good learning for me about how to use one's own intuition and maybe even unconscious guidance. Long ago, Anna Freud said, when in doubt, do the human thing. And I think she was referring to a case of a patient who came in, was of course lying down, doing an analysis, but was kind of grumpy and said she was really hungry. And I think that Anna Freud just decided to give her something to eat. Now, again, that would not be classical psychoanalytic technique, but again, she felt like it was just important to do the human thing. And that brings to mind an example from my own practice, and this was years ago. I was seeing a patient who was extremely intelligent and very intellectual. I found it quite difficult to actually break through that and make contact with her on an emotional level. And so I was struggling along with her to be able to do that. She was coming for what we call block therapy, so she had to fly in from another city, and this was long before cell phones. So she had come with a taxi from the airport to my office and had arranged with the cab driver to pick her up hours later when we would be finished, let's say at 3 p.m. And it turns out she was going to be my last patient because this is when my kids were home and I would be home when they got home off the bus. So I'm tidying up and getting ready to leave. She has left. It's maybe 5 after 3. 10 after 3. And I walk down to the parking lot to get in my car and I see her standing there. And so I said, what happened? And she said, I don't know. The guy hasn't shown up and I don't know what to do. I'm afraid, I was cutting it kind of close and, I don't know if I'm going to make my flight. Now, mind you, the airport was like 5 minutes from my office. So I said, get in the car. I'll take you there. And she was like, oh, no, are you sure? I'm like, it's no problem. It's 5 minutes from here. Just get in the car. I'll take you there, right? I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it, right? And I wasn't making a conscious therapeutic plan or decision, but I just did the human thing. And lo and behold, that ended up having a huge impact on her. When she came back the next time, she talked about how prior to that, she just didn't think I really cared, that what I was doing was just because I was a professional, and that's what I being paid to do, and so on. And somehow that spontaneous gesture, right, is when I got on the call and just doing a human thing and giving her a ride to the airport, really impacted her. And then those defenses against closeness and the wall really came down. So, very often we just see that as existing in the patient and we're challenging them to do something about it. But in this case, I ended up doing something which had an impact. So I hope this can help you to begin to not just think about, but to prioritize and to allow yourself to go with some of these spontaneous, creative ideas. It looks like, again, the masters give themselves some of that leeway to actually try some of these things and then just to track, as we always do, response to intervention. So I invite you to pay attention to some of those creative inklings and maybe to give yourself the chance to try some of them and see how they work for you. So I'd love to hear about some of your creative ways of intervening, especially at this time, but also if you have some good examples from the past that you want to share with us. So I look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.